Hello, my name's Amanda. I am a mystic, an alchemist, a mother, and a retreat owner. And today, for the very first time ever, I'm going to be sharing with you my story and why my mission and passion in life is so important. And it all stems from what I have gone through. So, my number one mission and purpose in life is to help people know that they are powerful, that they can heal themselves. And I'm here to give them the tools to bridge that gap and to connect more to the divine. And so, this story that I'm about to share with you has been the catalyst for me doing this work, and I'm so grateful for it all. And there has been some challenges, and for me personally, I learn with experience. And so my wisdom is through gnosis. I just want to share a little bit of background about me. So I grew up in Melbourne, in Victoria, and I grew up in an area that was so disconnected from nature. So we had, no trees. It was a concrete jungle. And I went to a school that was surrounded by factories and fumes, and there was a lot of just disconnection. And there was also some poverty, and I grew up around a lot of commission homes. I didn't really go on holidays either, so I didn't really have any connection to nature. But what I did have was my connection to God. I'm so grateful for that, to have that opportunity. So I was baptized at 6 weeks old. I went to a private Catholic primary school. I did my reconciliation, my Holy Communion, all of the things. And I went to a Catholic high school as well. So I had always had a really strong connection and devotion to God. And I was always fascinated by the unseen. So I could feel spirit, but I could not see it, but I could feel it, and I just knew that it was there. It was like the veil to me was so intriguing, to almost touch that veil. So death fascinated me, why we're here. I would always ask questions like, why are we here? What's the purpose of life? All of those questions to my family. And I was always very curious about life and about religion. So I always ask a lot of questions. And it wasn't until I became a maiden, so when I was 13 years old, I lost that connection to the divine, and I started abusing drugs and alcohol. And I was escaping from my life, and I felt like that was making me happy for a short period of time. So when I was 13, I started to really disconnect from my body. I started to look at my body as an object. I was disconnected from my cycle as I was changing into a woman. I started to become obsessed with boys, and I started to create fantasies about lust, and all of my desires was all external. I lost my connection to the divine. I started abusing alcohol and drugs on a weekly basis, sometimes twice a week at the age of 13, to the point where I was vomiting and passing out. And I was sexually active, and I was really disconnected from my body. And as I started to grow up, I was becoming a party girl. So in my teen years, I started doing more drugs and drinking, and it just kept creeping up more and more as I became more disconnected from myself. I started to find community and unity and family within the nightclub scene. So I was really big into the Melbourne nightlife, and I became the party girl. So I created this persona to keep myself safe. And this persona that I created was a mask, and that's who I thought I was. I thought that I was the fun party girl. And so I associated drugs and alcohol with that. And I loved what I did love about that scene was that I never wanted to go home. I didn't feel safe at home. So when I went to the nightclubs, I would walk in and it would be like my family's there and we'd be dancing and connecting, and it was just pure love and ecstasy. And I loved that. I loved that. I craved that. I dreamt of those things all the time. So to have all of those fantasies come to life within the nightclub scene, that's why it was so important for me to be at the clubs every single weekend. So all my money was going on going out, drinking, drugs, clothes, and it was all to create the persona. Interestingly enough, as I turned 18 and I left high school, I became a makeup artist because I loved that it would literally change my state when I would put my mask on. And so I became addicted to that mask. As I started to leave high school, I became extremely anxious and depressed. I did have anxiety all throughout my childhood, but as I left high school, it was heightened so much within the workforce. Within the workforce, I was bullied by other women, and my sisterhood wounds cut deep into my soul. And I had never experienced bullying before in high school, but it was more after high school that I experienced that. And it led me into a deep depression. I started to question who I was, and I was becoming suicidal. I remember vividly one day, I met my husband, and this was just before we got married. My mother-in-law and him were trying to help me when I was having a panic attack. I thought I was actually dying. And it was because I was taking prescription drugs and drinking, and I just didn't know how to live my life anymore. I could not see the light. I went through the deepest, darkest depression at that point. And I remember them calling the ambulance, and the ambulance coming and saying that it was just an anxiety attack. And I remember thinking, this is just an anxiety attack. This is like living in hell. So I feel like I have been to hell. Fast forward to when I got married, I started drinking every day, and it was so accepted. So I was a highly functioning alcoholic by this point. I had been an alcoholic for 23 years in total, and no one knew. It was so disguised by my mask, by my makeup, and by looking like this. I used to think that an alcoholic was the old man, the smelly old man in the pub that was there every night drinking. But this was also what an alcoholic looked like as well. And it was so accepted, especially when I became a mother. So when I became a mother, I started to become very lonely, and I started to go off into fantasy land about being at the nightclubs again. I found it really hard to transition into the motherhood phase because I was still holding on to this old identity of who I thought I was. And I started to get a lot of physical symptoms from this. I started to get diagnosed with polycystic ovary syndrome, with anxiety, depression, and chronic fatigue, because I also started to get insomnia as well. My adrenals were through the roof. I was in fight and flight mode constantly, always on in my masculine energy, so much, so disconnected from my body and my womb, so disconnected from nature. I had no idea how I was going to get out of it. When I had my second son, I started to have a spiritual awakening. I started to see the world a little bit differently. I started going back to church because I thought that's where I had to be to connect back to God and to my soul. I still felt this disconnection. I started drinking more and more. I started going to different bottle shops and hiding my alcohol bottles in the different bins so my husband wouldn't see that this addiction was taking over my life. I made some really bad decisions as a mother, and I have worked through so much of the guilt and shame, but the addiction was taking over my life. It was driving me to do things that I thought I would never do. It was going against my values, my ethics. I was literally going against myself, creating so much pain within my physical body. With my third child, I could not even walk at this point. So I had so much physical pain. My mental state was absolutely shot. I I was in the darkest depression, more so than what I was before I got married at that time when the ambulance had to come. I felt like this was living in hell and I couldn't see the light again. And I remember I couldn't even dress myself. I just didn't know how to live my life anymore because I couldn't exercise, I couldn't get around the house to pick up toys. I had no support and I felt so alone. I did love being a mother as well, and that was the other thing, was that I was holding on to a lot of um I guess, shame around being a stay-at-home mother because all of my friends and everyone around me was going back to work straight after giving birth. And I did want to be a mum. I did want to stay home with my children. I had three children under the age of 4. My life was chaotic, but I wanted that. I wanted that so desperately. But I'd had no education. I had no tools on how to really embody this new version of myself coming into the mother role. When I was pregnant with my third child, I went through my biggest awakening yet. Just when I thought I couldn't have gone down deeper into the pits of hell, I went down deeper. My nan, who was my best friend, she raised me. She passed away when I was pregnant with my son. And to grow life and to be that portal of life when you're so close to the veil, you're literally in between worlds when you're pregnant, and to also lose a loved one was a very spiritual experience for me. It was like, again, I was touching the veil again. And I loved that feeling of being so close to spirit. But at the same time, I was grieving so much over my nan, and I had no support. I felt like no one had my back. And that's why my back pain started flaring up more. On a metaphysical level, no support. I wasn't getting the support that I needed. So I started to really question, what is this? What is this world that I'm living in? When my nan died, it opened up my crown chakra. It opened up my perception. And I started to ask more questions again, like what I was doing back in my early childhood. At this point, I was having psychology appointments every week. I stopped taking all of the prescription drugs, but I was still drinking every day. And I had support workers at my house twice a week. From the government, I had a woman that come out every few days to check on me on my mental health because I was not in a good way. I even had Child Protective Services come to my home because they knew that I was drinking heavily and I couldn't get out of this darkness. And I remember this one moment when I was outside in my backyard in Melbourne and I had my 3 kids in the house. I was hanging up the washing and I was just saying to God or to the universe or to whoever wanted to listen to me, please, God, please give me a sign, get me out of this darkness. I can't do this anymore. I'm sick of the doctors just giving me prescriptions. I've got to change something. And I remember a gush of wind came through and my nan's voice came in. Oh, I've got goosebumps even just thinking about it. It was profound. This experience that I had with spirit was nothing like I had ever seen, felt, heard beyond my 5 senses. And it blew me away. Literally, like the wind came in And I was just listening to her through the wind. And this might sound absolutely crazy, but it happened. And she said, Amanda, you have to leave Melbourne. You have to go now. You have to leave. And I remember thinking at the time, that's really interesting because we have 7 generations of our family, my lineage from Victoria. My lineage is from England, Ireland, and Scotland, and that's where I get my Celtic roots and energy from. But my ancestors came over in the early 1800s. They came over and migrated to Victoria, Melbourne, and no one ever left. I was the first one to leave my state and my state of mind, which was like this prison, this program. And I remember thinking, I have to be the one to break the cycle. I have to be the one to break the cycle, to leave and to break the cycle of addiction. In my family line, there is a huge influence of substance abuse, and I was the one that was going to break this cycle, and it felt huge for me at the time. And anyway, fast forward a few weeks, it happened so quick, and it was just divine because I knew that that's when I was starting to really connect more with spirit. And I convinced my husband to leave. And everyone thought I was going mad at this point. And I just followed and trusted the messages I was getting from the divine. We moved up to Queensland, didn't know where we were going to live, didn't know anything, didn't know anyone, left everything we ever knew, took our 3 kids. They were under the age of 5 at this point, and COVID happened 6 months later. And I thought, thank you, universe, because I could not have lived in the most lockdown city in the world. There is no way I would have been able to cope with my mental state already the way it was. So I'm so glad that I listened to that message from my nan. I started to have mystical experiences. I started to really listen to my dreams. Even though I was still drinking heavily every day, I started to open up to the divine. And I had another huge awakening in 2020, just like a lot of other people. This one was very profound. This one was different. So the first one was a spiritual awakening. This one was a Kundalini awakening, I think. I don't know, but I'm pretty sure it was because it like hit me to the ground. And I remember all of my chakras going boom, 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 like waking up. And this energy of like, I suddenly remember. It was an activation of remembering. It was a DNA, a cell activation. It was like, it was a full body activation and ascension. And then I started to see the world with completely different lenses. One minute I was this person, the next minute I was more me. And it started to blow my mind. I knew that I had to do the healing work. I knew that I was a healer in past lives, and that was my mission on this planet, was to help people wake up, to help them see that they are the soul and that they can heal themselves. I knew that this was my mission. And I went on this journey of being like really a fast journey of becoming a Reiki master, bars access consciousness practitioner. I started doing all of the work with the tarot and looking at different modalities and spiritual cultures and religions. And I started to really open up my channel. And at this point, my gifts started activating. So my clairaudient, my clairvoyancy, it all just started waking up. And I started to shift into a different frequency and a different dimension. I was living my life in a completely different dimension. 2022, I was told that I needed spinal surgery. The doctors were throwing me more prescription drugs and they were telling me that I need to have this surgery. And I kept saying, no, I don't need to have this surgery. I know that I need to do this myself. And they all laughed at me and treated me like I was uneducated, and I felt like I was never being seen within the medical system. It wasn't until I started to work out that if I manifested this into the physical body, surely I can uncreate this. And so I started to find modalities that helped me. I started to move my body. I started to connect to my womb. I started to connect to the elemental spirits and to nature, because I realized that I am nature. I am one with Gaia. I started to connect back to her, and I started to connect to the Holy Spirit again, to the divine, to the universe, to God, whatever you want to call it. I started to connect back, and I started to remember my primal roots, my innate nature as a woman, and I started to heal myself. I started to move my hips, and it felt amazing. I didn't feel like I didn't feel like I had this guard up anymore. And it was the most liberating feeling in the world. It felt like pure ecstasy. It felt like euphoria. And I thought, if I can do this, I want to show other women that they can achieve this as well. The connection to the divine is like something that I can't even put to words, but it is what has healed me in my journey. And so what happened from there was I started to create women's circles. I started to run retreats. I started to teach women about embodiment, because once I started coming back into my body after having this huge awakening, everything started shifting. My cycles became more regular. I started to heal myself. I started to create these women's circles that felt like being in the nightclub, with having unity and love and play and fun. And I started to create this unique experience for women to really feel embodied and to connect to their womb. And so when I started doing this work, my circles have become a bit of a 5D forest disco. And it just brings me back to that feeling of being in the nightclubs again, and still having that connecting to that young maiden who was in the party scene, who was the party girl. Since running my retreats and really embodying all of the experiences that I've had, and I've turned this darkness into light, I've alchemized these experiences that I've had, and I've used them as my medicine. Now that I have created these incredible containers, I'm seeing the difference in women, because I have healed myself. I no longer have physical pain. I'm no longer addicted to substance. I no longer have polycystic ovaries. I've just witnessed these women just glowing and radiating, and it's rippling through their families. I'm seeing that their children are benefiting from this, their husbands are. And it's not just about you and me. It's much bigger than us. This work ripples through families. It extends 7 generations up and 7 generations down. And just like a drug addict, someone who is in the pits of hell, can affect all of their family and a society and spread that darkness everywhere, a light worker can change that and ripple through light. A light worker can heal themselves and encourage others to heal themselves too. So this work it's profound. And so that's why I do the work that I do, because I know that you can heal yourself. So if you are feeling inspired by listening to my story, perhaps you may resonate with some of the things that I've gone through. I have created some incredible offerings to support you on your healing journey as well. I offer one-on-one mentorships and programs to help connect you back to your body and to help activate your intuition. I offer one-on-one healing sessions, energetic healing sessions, to shift any stagnant energy and old programs that you might be holding on to. And I also offer incredible experiences with my retreat containers. And I am running some retreats here on the Sunshine Coast in Australia this year. I will be branching out next year all over the world because I know that people really need this medicine. This is medicine that I wish that I had when I was going through all of that darkness. And it just creates the most incredible container for you to find your passion and to find your purpose in life. It's like that spark that just comes back after leaving the retreat. I witness it with the women, and you have the opportunity to also experience the incredible transformations that I've seen. So please reach out if you have any questions or if you're interested in any of the modalities or programs that I offer. I'm here on Instagram, I'm here on Facebook, and I'm here on my website as well. So thank you so much for listening, sending you so many blessings, lots of love.